Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Retirement Cafe podcast, which is sponsored by My Financial Planner. Not knowing when you can afford to retire or what your pensions and investments and savings will provide can be worrying. My Financial Planner provides independent, fixed fee retirement planning advice, bringing clarity to your financial future. At My Financial Planner, we build a financial plan for your retirement and equip you with the knowledge to implement the plan and, if necessary, purchase any products you need yourself rather than selling you pensions or investments. Find out more about getting a plan to fund the retirement you really want at myfinancialplanner.co.uk. I'm delighted to welcome to the podcast today founder of the Money Panel and In Her Financial Shoes podcast, Catherine Morgan. If you happen to be in the financial services world, you may well know Catherine. In our conversation, Catherine shares her very personal story of how she became a financial advisor after starting work in a bank at the age of 18 and working her way up the ladder, all the while racking up £30,000 worth of personal debt. Having realised that her spending habits were linked to her feelings of self-worth, Catherine used her personal experience to create a company designed to help others experiencing similar feelings and difficulties. The Money Panel works specifically with women to help them become financially independent. In this episode, Catherine openly shares her story about her relationship to money and shows us why we shouldn't rely on money to build our self-worth, but instead draw from our positive life achievements. I hope you enjoy listening to this conversation as much as I enjoyed having it. Welcome to the Retirement Cafe podcast, Catherine Morgan.
Morning, Justin. How are you? Great to be here today.
Very well, Catherine. Really looking forward to chatting to you today. I was actually on one of your webinars last night, so I don't know whether you noticed I'd logged in surreptitiously just as you started. I was very pleased I didn't have to have my video on because I was actually watching your webinar whilst I was on my exercise bike. So luckily you didn't have to see me.
I thought you were going to say from the bath, because often I get people messaging me afterwards going, I was listening to you in the bath.
So Catherine, we've known each other for a while, but for the people who don't know you, can you tell me a little bit about yourself and your expertise?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a mum of two. I live in a little village on the outskirts of Milton Keynes, which is smack bang in the middle of the country, pretty much as far out from either side of the coastlines. I've been in financial services since day dot. I came into financial services when I was 18, following in my sister's footsteps. Actually, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And of course, therefore, just got a job in the bank, as many people did. And I now run a international company called the Money Panel, and we help consumers and advisors. So our big mission is to equip and prepare 1 million women to be financially resilient, to reduce their financial anxiety and really help them to be independent, not codependent with their finances. And that mission has led us to not just form our own communities and memberships and digital courses and things like that, but also to create this domino effect where we can help to support financial planners and advisors to integrate the amazing work of financial coaching into their businesses so that we can really help to focus on people, not just products.
Fantastic. So tell me, you said something very key there is empowering women. So tell me, why is there a need there and why is that your focus?
I think initially it was really just in my attempt to better improve my financial situation. I just started to talk and communicate and share my story, and then just started connecting with other like-minded women who were in very similar situations to me. And to put it into perspective, I mean, I've been a financial advisor since I was in my early 20s. But I had a terrible relationship with money. I lived in my overdraft every month. I racked up over £30,000 worth of consumer debts because and as a financial advisor, you can imagine the guilt and the shame and the judgment that I felt giving high net worth clients advice on how to invest. And I wasn't doing that for myself. Or in fact, I was, but then I would just pull it out of the market again because I was overspending. And for me, there was this huge disconnect between working in the bank and selling financial products versus actually what mattered, which was understanding my beliefs, my behaviors, my habits, I very much connected my self-worth to my net worth. I believe that if I had more money, I would feel more successful, I would be more successful, I would feel better about myself. And it was going through that journey myself and understanding where my limiting beliefs came from, what impact messages that I'd heard growing up about money and beliefs and patterns and things that I'd observed. I had years of being bullied in school. I had eating disorders all through my teenage years and my 20s. Gosh. And so I used money as a tool to make me feel better about myself. And I was seeing this in my work. I was seeing this with people that I was dealing with in the bank. I was dealing with high net worth clients. I was dealing with women who had lost their partners that had no idea how to manage money. They had no involvement in the financial conversations in the house. And so I guess the empowerment around women for me is particularly important because generationally things have changed. Generationally, it isn't so much that the man is the main breadwinner and he goes out and, brings home the salary and the wife is the caregiver. It just doesn't happen like that anymore. No. And even in our household, my husband is the chef. He does most of the school runs for the children. And I bring in more income than he does. And that's okay. There's no gender balance or any difficulties in our household. It's just the way that it is. So I think it's more and more important now, more than ever, for women to just have some awareness as to what's going on with money and not just the household purse. Many women are very confident to manage the household purse. But when it comes to making investment decisions or talking about their pensions or talking about potential issues like long-term care, then they need to be involved in those conversations, not necessarily managing it all, but at least aware and involved so that they're not codependent on anybody else.
Yeah. So how did you, obviously you had, you had your training and your expertise coming from the banking sector and then moving into financial advising. So you were empowered on that front. But how did you manage to change your money habits?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I often get asked this question on interviews. For me, it was a journey. It wasn't like I did one thing and then everything changed. It was the small steps. And it was all kind of wrapped together with awareness over actually what I was often avoiding. So there was a lot of trauma in my childhood, particularly around my teenage years, that I never dealt with. And the impact on me was that I felt low self-confidence. Because I was bad, I was very badly bullied at school. I was attacked at school. And I had lots of significant changes in my teenage years. My twin brother emigrated to Australia when I was 15. My dad emigrated to Australia when I was 15. So I lost kind of some important people in my life at quite a pivotal age. And the way that I dealt with that kind of mental health, if you like, was that I just went very insular. I kind of locked myself away. And I just self-sabotaged. I felt like there was something wrong with me. Like I felt like there must be a reason why I've lost these people in my life. There must be a reason why I'm being bullied. There must be a reason why I don't feel good about my body. And I had a huge amount of body shame. And so for me, one of the key moments in my life was actually 10 years later. I was living in Jersey in the Channel Islands at the time, and I was 28. And at this particular time, I was managing a team of financial advisors, which was a really difficult thing to do at that age, because I was looking after people who had been in the industry for years and years and years. And so there was a lot of inner critic kind of work coming out that, well, surely you can't manage a team of financial advisors when, you've only been doing the job for 10 years. And it was a difficult time for me. I learned a lot about myself, and I had a very supportive manager at the time who I'll always be extremely grateful for. And when I was 28, living in Jersey, I walked into this coffee shop one morning. And for any of you that have ever been out to Jersey, it's a beautiful little island. I used to walk along the beach on my way to work. It was just wonderful. And I walked into this coffee shop opposite the branch. I was working at HSBC at the time. And in front of me, as I went to pay for my tea, was a leaflet for personal styling. And I picked up this leaflet and I took it home that night. And I said to my fiance at the time, my now husband, I'd love to have this personal styling day where someone could just come in and show me what I should be wearing, and weed out all my wardrobes. Because that's what I used to spend my money on. I would spend my money before I'd even been paid. And so this lady came over, she spent 2 days with me, not one day, 2 days sorting my wardrobe out. And I remember vividly, she left me sitting on this little red couch in Jersey. It was pitch black outside, and I sat down, and as she closed the door, I looked around me and I had like 12 bin bags worth of clothes. And I just sat there and I just cried and cried and cried. And it was like somebody had given me permission finally to get rid of all the crap that I'd been hoarding in my life in an attempt to make me feel better about myself. And that was a real light bulb moment for me. I sat there and thought, I don't want to look at everybody else, compare myself to everybody else, try and live up to everybody else's expectations, live up to this status quo that if I have nice things and nice cars and a nice house, that people will like me. I was just so desperate to be loved that I used money in attempt to feel better about myself. And so after that moment, I flew this lady over from the UK. She trained me up to be a personal stylist, and I set up my first business helping women to feel better about their bodies. And actually at that time, I then fell pregnant as I was training. And obviously my body changed anyway when you're having babies. And that was, I learned a lot about building a business in that time. I learned a lot about myself. I finally felt like I'd found something that took away my 2-year itch. So when I was working at the bank, I had this 2-year itch. People would laugh at me about it. My managers would always say I was very tenacious and I was always looking for the next opportunity. And I think actually probably what it was is just that entrepreneurial side of me coming out, that I wanted to build something better and something that could have an impact on people. And so that was the first part of the journey, was just having that awareness over what was the emotion behind the habit on the behavior of buying clothes. And I had to really understand that, well, when I was feeling down or bad about myself, my typical reaction was to go and buy clothes. So it was almost like a trigger. I understood the trigger. I understood what the emotion was behind that. So I could just redirect that energy and that emotion somewhere else. And that's what I did. I redirected that energy into learning. And I would read books, I'd listen to podcasts, I would write blogs, just do anything to redirect that emotion. So I'd still feel the same sense of gratification and self-worth, but in a different way. Yeah. And that was the first thing that I did. But that led then on to many, many other things. But financial awareness for me was the second biggest one. It was about understanding what I was spending. I switched all my banking over to Starling Bank. They were categorizing everything for me. And that was quite an eye-opener. I was like, oh goodness, I'm spending like £400 a month on Amazon. For what? Like I was buying ridiculous things that I didn't need. And so I decided to make a very proactive response to my finances and actually giving every pound a purpose. So every single pound that came in, I would give it a job, almost like, they were a team of staff members arriving at my desk in the mornings and saying, what job do you want to give me today? And I would give that pound a job, give that pound a purpose. And those two things were definitely hugely pivotal in changing that whole relationship with money.
Yeah, fantastic. So obviously your this mission of empowering women to becoming much more financially capable and well, really understanding money, I suppose, and using it and having real purpose for it. So for people, obviously, for the Retirement Cafe listeners, we've got a lot of retirees already, and there will be people who may have a certain amount of regret possibly that they didn't save enough for their retirement, and they're now having to, scrimp and save through their retirement, maybe even surviving solely on state pensions, or maybe only reliant on a partner's pension. What are the tools and the strategies that someone could to maybe use in that environment?
Do you know, as you were saying that, Justin, what came up immediately me for there was forgiveness. Which, is that a tool? Is it a strategy? Probably not, but it's something that all of us, I think, need to practice more of. Because if you're sitting there listening to this and thinking, oh gosh, I wish I'd have done this in my 20s. I wish I'd have done this in my 30s. I left it too late. If only I'd done this. What happens is that your brain starts to connect money to your self-worth and your identity. And that is not a great place to be, because when we start telling ourselves, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy enough, I wish I'd done something sooner, I should have done this. Whenever you hear yourself saying that, you're connecting your identity to money, and it's not linked at all. Your self-worth does not equal your net worth. And so the first thing I would say to anybody who finds themselves saying those things is to detach that from who you are, because your wealth, how much you have or don't have in your retirement, has nothing to do with who you are, nothing to do with your identity. And quite often we do have to think about, what are those times that we've experienced that we just need to practice some self-forgiveness of? And I'll give you an example of that. When I was living with my husband in our second property, we bought this house in 2007. So just before the markets crashed. We were both in mortgages at the time. So we were, you could imagine when the markets crashed and then we rented the house out and lived out in Jersey for 5 years, we had a huge amount of regret, saying to ourselves, that was a terrible decision. Why did we not see this coming? We should have known what was going to happen. Why did we stretch ourselves and have a giant mortgage when we didn't actually need that size property? All of these beliefs. And we really had to go back and just openly, outwardly say, we forgive ourselves for those decisions. They weren't bad decisions. Every decision that you make, there's a learning or a lesson behind it. And often we learn way more from things that we didn't do as much as things that we did do. And so I would say to anybody, like, wipe that slate clean, because if you continue to operate with those beliefs, which come from the things that we tell ourselves, then we're always going to feel bad about decisions that we've made. So from a strategy, tactic, tips perspective, I guess I would just say practice some forgiveness and practice self-gratitude. What have you done that you're proud of? What have you done that you're grateful of? If you're receiving state pension right now, that's because you've paid your stamp, you've paid your national insurance contribution. Be grateful for the fact that you did and were able to do that, and seek happiness and gratitude in things outside of wealth, because it's not just about having more of money, having more of something. Often there's lots of research, actually, interestingly, that shows that once you reach over about 70,000 US dollars, I think it is, that there's no evidence to support that you'll be happier once you reach that tipping point. So, yes, I'm sure there's things that we wish we'd all have done in the past, but we can't change our past, but we can change our future by changing the meaning that we attach to our past and things that have happened. I'm a big believer in looking at everything as an opportunity or as a lesson that we can learn about ourselves.
Yeah, wise words, Catherine. Wise words. So you've got a number of kind of tools available to people, some free, some paid for. One, of course, your amazing podcast, In Her Financial Shoes. Tell me what was the inspiration for that?
Yes, quite an interesting story. So we launched the podcast in January 2019. I'd just come out of hospital, actually. I was really poorly. I had sepsis, and I was in hospital for 2 weeks. And 6 months prior to that, I was sitting at a lunch with a team of solicitors, female solicitors that I'd been invited out for lunch with. And one of them said to me at that lunch, "You've got a really great way of communicating, like making finance really simple without using any jargon." She's like, "You should go on radio." And I was like, "Oh no, I couldn't possibly do that. Like that would be terrifying." And so she goes, "No, I'm serious. Like I've got the email address of a producer for a local radio show. Why don't you email him?" So I got home that evening and I fired off an email to the producer. I had no idea what to say. I just kind of Googled how to pitch to a radio show. And I just put together this email and said, "Look, I've got this idea. I've got this concept. This would be my first 3 episodes. These are the kind of guests I'd want to interview. What do you think?" And within 10 minutes, he emailed me back saying, "Can we have a conversation?" And so I think it was about 8 weeks later, I'd launched the Money Mindset Show on my local radio station. I also then found another lady who was local to my area, a doctor who was also championing a very similar topic of educating people about money. So we kind of co-produced it together. And we did that for about 4 or 5 months, interviewed some fantastic guests. And I absolutely loved it. I mean, I was sitting in this tiny little studio. It was all through the summer that we recorded. It was horrendously hot, but it was such fun. And I had made some amazing contacts. And then I said to the producer, "Look, we need to go out and do a podcast with this because people don't have time to listen to live radio so much anymore. They don't have time to listen to all the music tracks in between. We need to get this out as a podcast." And he didn't really get it. He didn't really get the whole podcast scene. And so we just decided, actually, we want to get this mission out to more people. And so we launched the podcast, and we've launched a weekly episode ever since we launched. And it's just been fantastic because the first thing it does is it builds a huge amount of trust. You're in the ears of people that want to hear about your story, other people's stories, valuable content that can help them. And the number of messages that we've received from people saying, literally, the podcast has changed their lives. That kind of just fuels you to just want to create, as you do, Justin, more and more episodes, so that it gives people an opportunity to connect with who you are and your guests. And it's just been an amazing experience.
Yeah. So Catherine, people listening to this, and I'm sure there's going to be many people who either kind of quizzing their own relationship with money, or maybe some of their children or grandchildren, they're thinking, they're struggling a bit, they're making some poor decisions, etc. Can they reach out to you to get help? What opportunity or what's available from Catherine Morgan to help people who are sitting there going, "Do you know what? That's my money story. A lot of that is resonating with me. I'm not under control. I don't understand it. I get frightened by money. Or I've got maybe shame, or I just need to understand more. So I need help with this, but I don't need to be sold financial products. I just need help kind of managing it. How can you help?"
Yeah, so our podcast is a great place to start. If you're listening to this, you're obviously a podcast listener. So come and follow us on the In Her Financial Shoes podcast. But we try and produce content that helps in all different ways. So we have a weekly blog, we have a podcast, we have a Facebook community, which is where I hang out most of the time. So you can come and find us on Facebook. We also have a low-cost membership. So if you are a woman listening to this, we have a low-cost membership, which is really for people that are wanting to go that next level and understand more about helping their relationship with money and then the practical steps. So we run masterclasses and things in our Money Circle membership. And then throughout the year, we have courses and programs that we deliver where we have groups of women coming together and talking together about their relationship with money. And we have a very set structure on different topics that we help people with. One of the key things I would say for anyone wanting to just get started and improve their financial situation is to look at their relationship with money. And what I would say is that the first thing to recognize is that 90% of the decisions that you're making are coming from a place of emotion. They're coming from an emotional state. And so if you can just bring some curiosity to what kind of things did you hear about money growing up? What kind of beliefs did your parents instill in you around money? What kind of messages did you hear? Those things become our blueprint by which we operate. And so if you've got children, for example, children often learn through seeing what they're seeing you do rather than what you tell them to do. Because kids don't tend to listen to their parents, right? So, if you can change your relationship with money and open up that conversation, that taboo conversation about money in your household, you're not only going to change your financial situation, you're going to change every single future generation. And that's really powerful. So a lot of people say, well, I want to improve my kids and help my kids have a healthier relationship. Well, it has to start with you, because they will learn from what you do and what they observe from you. So yeah, come and check our podcast out. We've got our courses. We've got a course coming out in January. We have our membership. We have pretty much everything that we can, a bunch of resources that we can help people with, depending on their situation.
Well, that's fantastic. And Catherine, I really appreciate you spending the time chatting to me this morning. I think what you're doing is fantastic. It's really great work. Really great ideals to help people. And I know really deep in your heart, that's exactly what you're trying to do. And I just wish you all the success with it. Well done. I think you're one of the leading lights of the financial planning profession. And I'm very proud to know you and to chat with you this morning. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much. That means a lot. And great work with your podcast too, Justin. I think that, if you can help people to just start talking about money. It's not, money's not the taboo subject. It's the meaning that we attach to it. And I think what you're delivering is exceptional value. So I'm very proud to be here with you today, Justin. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, Catherine. So until next time, this is Justin King, helping you feel more informed in your retirement.